story of Fenris. Tyr was generally spoken of and represented as one-armed, just as Odin was called one-eyed. Various explanations are offered by different authorities. Some claim that it was because he could give the victory only to one side, others because a sword has but one blade. However this may be, the ancients preferred to account for the fact in the following way. Loki married secretly at Jotunheim the hideous giantess angur-boda, or anguish and boding, who bore him 3 monstrous children, the wolf Fenris, Hel, the party-colored goddess of death, and Jormungandr, a terrible serpent. He kept the existence of these monsters secret as long as he could, but they speedily grew so large that they could no longer remain confined in the cave where they had come to light. Odin, from his throne Hildskjalf, soon became aware of their existence, and also of the disquieting rapidity with which they increased in size. Fearful lest the monsters, when they had gained further strength, should invade Asgard and destroy the gods, All-Father determined to get rid of them, and, striding off to Jotunheim, he flung Hel into the depths of nifl-heim, telling her she could reign over the 9 dismal worlds of the dead. He then cast Jormungandr into the sea, where he attained such immense proportions that at last he encircled the earth and could bite his own tail. Into mid-ocean's dark depths hurled, grown with each day to giant size, the serpent soon enclosed the world with tail and mouth in circle-wise, held harmless still by Odin's will. Valhalla by J.C. Jones. None too well pleased that the serpent should attain such fearful dimensions in his new element, Odin resolved to lead Fenris to Asgard, where he hoped by kindly treatment to make him gentle and tractable. But the gods, one and all, shrank in dismay when they saw the wolf, and none dared approach to give him food except Tyr, whom nothing daunted. Seeing that Fenris daily increased in size, strength, veracity, and fierceness, the gods assembled in council to deliberate how they might best dispose of him. They unanimously decided that as it would desecrate their peace steads to slay him, they would bind him fast so that he could work them no harm. With that purpose in view, they obtained a strong chain named lading, and then playfully proposed to Fenris to bind this about him as a test of his vaunted strength. Confident in his ability to release himself, Fenris patiently allowed them to bind him fast, and when all stood aside, with a mighty effort, he stretched himself and easily burst the chain asunder. Concealing their jargon, the gods were loud in praise of his strength, but they next produced a much stronger fetter, Droma, which, after some persuasion, the wolf allowed them to fasten around him as before. Again, in a short, sharp struggle, sufficed to burst this bond, and it is proverbial in the north to use the figurative expressions to get loose out of lading and to dash out of Droma whenever great difficulties have to be surmounted. Twice the Aesir strived to bind, twice did they fetters powerless find. Iron or brass of no avail, naught save through magic could prevail. Valhalla by J.C. Jones. The gods, perceiving now that ordinary bonds, however strong, would never prevail against the Fenris wolf's great strength, bade Skirnir, Frey's servant, go down to svart-alfa-heim to bid the dwarves fashion a bond which nothing could sever. By magic arts, the dark elves manufactured a slender silken rope from such impalpable materials as the sound of a cat's footsteps, a woman's beard, the roots of a mountain, the longings of the bear, the voice of fishes, and the spittle of birds. And when it was finished, they gave it to Skirnir, assuring him that no strength would avail to break it, and that the more it was strained, the stronger it would become. Gleipnir at last, by dark elves cast, in svart-alfa-heim with strong spells wrought, to Odin was by Skirnir brought, as soft as silk, as light as air, yet still of magic power most rare. Valhalla by J.C. Jones. Armed with this bond, called Gleipnir, the gods went with Fenris to the island of Lingvi, in the middle of the lake Svartnir, and again proposed to test his strength. But although Fenris had grown still stronger, he mistrusted the bond which looked so slight. He therefore refused to allow himself to be bound, unless one of the Aesir would consent to put his hand in his mouth and leave it there, as a pledge of good faith, and that no magic arts were to be used against him. The gods heard the decision with dismay, and all drew back except Tyr, who, seeing that the others would not venture to comply with this condition, boldly stepped forward and thrust his hand between the monster's jaws. The gods now fastened Gleipnir securely around Fenris's neck and paws, and when they saw that his utmost efforts to free himself were fruitless, they shouted and laughed with glee. Tyr, however, could not share their joy, for the wolf, finding himself captive, bit off the god's hand at the wrist, which since then has been known as the wolf's joint. Then Loki said, "Be silent, Tyr, thou couldst never settle a strife twixt two of thy right hand also. I must mention make, which Fenris from thee took." And Tyr replied, "I of a hand am wanting, but thou of honest fame. Sad is the lack of either, nor is the wolf at ease. He in bonds must abide until the god's destruction." Seaman Zeta, Thrope's translation. Deprived of his right hand, Tyr was now forced to use the maimed arm for his shield, and to wield his sword with his left hand, but such was his dexterity that he slew his enemies just as before. The gods, in spite of the wolf's struggles, drew the end of the Feta, Gjelga, through the rock Gjöll, and fastened it to the boulder Thividi, which was sunk deep into the ground. Opening wide his fearful jaws, Fenris uttered such terrible howls that the gods, to silence him, thrust a sword into his mouth, the hilt resting upon his lower jaw, and the point against his palate. The blood then began to pour out in such streams that it formed a great river called Von. The wolf was destined to remain thus chained fast until the last day, when he would burst his bonds and would be free to avenge his wrongs. The wolf Fenrir, freed from the chain, shall range the earth. Death Song of Hakon, W. Taylor's translation. While some mythologists see in this myth an emblem of crime, restrained and made innocuous by the power of the law, others see the underground fire, which kept within bounds can injure no one, but, unfettered, fills the world with destruction and woe. Just as Odin's second eye is said to rest in Mirmir's well, so Tyr's second hand, or sword, is found in Fenris's jaws. He has no more use for two weapons than the sky for two suns. The worship of Tyr is commemorated in sundry places, such as Tübingen in Germany, which bear more or less modified forms of his name. The name has also been given to the aconite, a plant known in northern countries as Tyr's helm. So that was the story of Fenris, the final section of Chapter 5 of Myths of the Norsemen by Helene A Guerber, Tyr. I will be working my way through this book section by section, and if there are any other public domain books that you would like for me to read, please leave a comment below. Did you enjoy this video? Then subscribe for more, and be sure to check me out on Facebook and Patreon. Thank you for listening, and have a lovely evening.